Well, we finally have a response from Wizards, and they released it while I was sleeping because I'm on UK time. There is quite a bit to unpack with their press release, the statement that Wizards of the Coast has made given the sheer amount of pressure that they are facing, the current movement for folks to unsubscribe from their D&D Beyond subscriptions. So it's interesting that they release it on D&D Beyond, forcing people to come back to the platform. Something else that's interesting about their messaging, the way that this all reads and the way that they've released everything on Twitter, the D&D Beyond Twitter. Let's take a look at this. They said, as of 21 hours ago, over the past week, we have witnessed an incredible outpour of passion and dedication from our community working together to protect and cultivate the inclusive environment of Dungeons and Dragons. You all played your part extremely well. Please read our update on our open game license. Something that's interesting about pointing this art and bringing this all together here. If we look at this, the art is actually taken from a Magic the Gathering card, which is called Bar the Gate. The flavor text on this one is actually kind of interesting. This path is closed to you. You could take that either way. Maybe it's an acknowledgement saying that they're not going to be proceeding this way anymore. They're not going to try to push as much on their OGL changes. You could also read into it as a bit of a backhand to the player base. So take that for what you will. But when we look at the release, the press release that Wizards has put out, let's take a look at this. I'm going to go through it, I'm going to read it, and I'm going to layer in some of my thoughts, and then we'll discuss a little bit afterwards. When we initially covered the revising of OGL, it was with three major goals in mind. First, we wanted the ability to prevent the use of D&D content from being included in hateful and discriminatory products. Sure, nobody wants to see their work on the cover of Mein Kampf. Do I believe that this was their actual intention? No. I think they're just trying to cover themselves here. Second, we wanted to address those attempting to use D&D in Web3, blockchain games, and NFTs by making clear that OGL content is limited to tabletop games, role-playing content like campaigns, modules, and supplements. What they are saying here is not that they don't want to do NFTs or they don't want to use their products in these new web formats. They just want to be in complete control of this because, as we see here, Hasbro has their own NFTs and they've done it with the Power Rangers. We can see it here. They have partnered with Wax, a worldwide asset exchange, the king of NFTs, the world's #1 blockchain as measured by a number of users and transactions. I think it's all garbage. I don't follow any of the NFTs, but Hasbro is pro NFT. Let's come back here. And third, we wanted to ensure that the OGL is for the content creator, the homebrewer, the aspiring designer, our players, and the community, not major corporations to use for their own commercial and promotional purposes. Now, one could argue that someone is trying to target some of the bigger content creators, your Kobold Press, MCDM, your Critical Roles with this kind of a statement, or at least that's what they were doing before. I don't think so. When you start achieving success the way that Critical Role did off the backs of Dungeons and Dragons and their intellectual property, yes, they're definitely going to want a piece of that, but you will get a specific contract. They will get a tailored contract to continue using Dungeons and Dragons, to continue using some of their integrated systems. This isn't really targeted to people like that, businesses or corporations like that. What this is for is against competitors like Paizo, for example. And as we've seen recently from Paizo, they're moving completely away from the OGL. Their Pathfinder 2e system didn't even need to contain the OGL. They had so far removed themselves from anything associated with Wizards. But that doesn't mean that Wizards and Hasbro aren't going to try to use legal language so that they could try to take them to court and suppress them. And when you start comparing war chests, size of companies, corporations, Paizo doesn't even match that of Wizards or Hasbro. If we look at the market capitalization, that's how big of a company Hasbro is, because they're publicly traded and we can see this. As of market close on January 13th, they were a $9.12 billion US company. Their share price is about $66. And if we can see over the last 5 days, the last week, their share price has actually been going up. Paizo is not a publicly traded corporation, so there's no real way to gain any insight on this unless Paizo shares it themselves. But the press release continues. Driving these goals were 2 simple principles. 1, our job is to be good stewards of the game. You were up until this point, and then you tried to do some power move corporate BS, and now you are not good stewards in my opinion. 2, the OGL exists for the benefit of the fans. Yes, it does. At least in its original form, it's supposed to, because it encouraged creativity, it encouraged collaboration, and it opened up the market. There was just products that you could get that expanded the adventure, expanded what you could do with the tabletop game. The one that Wizards was trying to propose was not for the benefit of the fans. Nothing about those principles has wavered for a second. That was why our early drafts of the new OGL included the provisions that they did. We're going to talk about those provisions in a second, but this was not a draft. You do not send contracts to news releases, to businesses and people that you are working with your brand. You do not send them a draft with an NDA. You do not send them a draft with a fully fledged contract that you must sign. Let me. That is not how good business is done. That is called strong arming. But they continue. That draft language was provided to content creators and publishers so their feedback could be considered before anything was finalized. No, that is not true. Wizards, Hasbro, whoever sent it out originally intended for this to be the final copy. This was not a draft. This was what they were trying to strong arm their partners into signing. This is not a draft. They wanted it to go through in the form that they presented it. In the addition to language allowing us to address discriminatory and hateful conduct and clarifying what types of products the OGL covers, our drafts included royalty language designed to apply to large corporations attempting to use the OGL content. Yes, you just wanted to silence your competitors by making it unaffordable for them. What business doesn't want to do that? That seems like general corporate posturing. Doesn't mean it's fair, but it just means it happens a lot. It was never our intent to impact the vast majority of the community. However, it was, because the wording of this forces the community to act. They had a tiered royalty structure. What they were originally proposing in their first OGL, if you remember, was any content creator who wanted to create anything for D&D and using the OGL had to register with Hasbro or register with Wizards to create their content. If they started generating more than $50,000 in revenue, they had to then report that to Wizards. Now, Wizards, in their generosity, was going to allow creators to make money up until $750,000 US, at which point they would start paying a 25% royalty, which is astronomical. But there was wording in that original gaming license that allowed them to change the threshold whenever they wanted and to revoke their license, their ability to produce content under the new OGL whenever they wanted for whatever reason within 30 days. This next part is really cringy. However, it's clear from the reaction that we rolled a 1. Yes, they're gamers too, aren't they? It has become clear that it is no longer possible to fully achieve all 3 goals while staying true to our principles. So here's what we are doing. At this point, I don't really know what principles they are talking about. They already had the ability to suppress any hate speech if they found out their product was being used. They could already shut things down. They could send cease and desist letters, DMCA takedowns to content that they found offensive. They could already do that under the existing OGL. If they were looking to be good stewards of the brand, they were already doing that. The existing OGL was open. It allowed people to create and develop their own communities, and the game was flourishing. So they were already doing that. Why did they need to make this update? And saying that second, this exists for the benefit of the fans as being a principle? No, it wouldn't. Because if they shut down third-party content creators, people that were producing adventures, people that were making their own worlds, their own homebrew and sharing this, if you remove their ability to create, you don't get to expand, you don't get to have those shared experiences with players. So thus, the fans. I don't know if you've been paying attention to some of the latest releases from Wizards of the Coast, but there hasn't been a lot of substance in them. They haven't been that great or well written. And unfortunately, maybe fortunately for the fans, much of the third-party content that was being produced, because they were works of love, they were works of passion, they were in many cases just better than whatever Wizards was producing. And under their proposed OGL, Wizards had included language that allowed them to just steal works from its fans, from its community, and use it as they saw fit and cut them out entirely. So you can't tell me that that benefits the fans. That wholeheartedly benefits the corporation. But it was only a draft, right, guys? But we are not done yet. The next OGL will contain the provisions that allow us to protect and cultivate these inclusive environments we are trying to build, and specify that it covers only content for TTRPGs. That means that other expressions such as educational and charitable campaigns, live streams, cosplays, virtual tabletop uses, etc. will remain unaffected by any OGL update. Content already released under 1.0a will also remain unaffected. This is a good change, but they went about it in such an underhanded way, in such a dishonest way, and now they're backtracking hard on that. And this statement is probably true. I mean, you have things like video games and movies that are coming out, although Wizards did just cancel a whole slate of projects. What it will not contain is any royalty structure. This is a good change. It will also not include the license back provision that some people were afraid was a means for us to steal work. This is also a good change, and I don't know why anybody thought that this would be good legal language to include in your open game license that you were trying to force people to sign. That thought never crossed our minds. Under any new OGL, you will own the content you create. We won't. Any language we put down will be crystal clear and unequivocal on that point. Good, because your original language said that you could steal works. Do I honestly believe that they would have done this? Probably not. Not for the vast majority of things. However, if someone had a breakout success, if a new Critical Role was to emerge from the new open gaming license, or at least under the terms of that, Wizards of the Coast would be well within their rights to say, thank you, this is ours now, we are going to sell it and give you nothing. The license back language was intended to protect us and our partners from creators who incorrectly allege that we steal their work simply because of coincidental similarities. This line is probably true. I don't fault a business for wanting to have some sort of protection for similarities and coincidental things. It happens all the time. It's just the way that they did this, the way that they went about wording this, it's very disingenuous. As we continue to invest in the game that we love and move forward with partnerships in film, television, and digital games, that risk is simply too great to ignore. Yes, they need to have something that covers those mediums because the open gaming license does not. The new OGL will contain provisions to address that risk, but we will do it without a license back and without suggesting we have rights to the content you create. Your ideas and imagination are what makes this game special, and that belongs to you. There is something about this line, the way that it reads, that just raises my hackles and it gets me irritated. You've already tried to push the community in a direction that you wanted them to go. They didn't listen, and now you're paying the price for it. Yes, the fans' imagination, the community imagination is what made the game great, and you've destroyed much of the goodwill. Does this literally mean that Wizards and Dungeons & Dragons is going to fail tomorrow? No. Dungeons & Dragons is going to be just fine. But the golden age of Dungeons & Dragons, I think, is going to be coming to an end pretty quickly. A couple of last thoughts. First, we won't be able to release the new OGL today because we need to make sure we get it right. But it is coming, so they are still going to change the OGL. Second, you're going to hear people say that they won and we lost because making your voices heard forced us to change our plans. Well, it did, and it's changing things for the better for the fans and for the community. Those people will only be half right. They won and so did we. Wizards won in the sense that they know they still have a dedicated fan base. They know they can do whatever they want and certain people will still buy whatever products they push out. That's just the reality of it. Instead of trying to force all of these major changes through at once, they will likely now switch to a long game. We already know that Wizards is going to try to monetize the game even more. They are going to try to stuff microtransactions into it, and the only way they can do this is if they own a platform. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that right off the hop, or if they're going to be able to do that as fast as they wanted to now because of the community pushback. But they go on. Our plan was always to solicit the input of our community before any update to the OGL. That's why they sent it out with all of the NDAs. The drafts you've seen were attempting to do just that. No, they weren't. They were not drafts. We want to always delight fans and create experiences together that everyone loves. Sure, the designers may want to do that. The lower level staff at Wizards might want to actually do this. Do not direct your anger, your rage to the staff of Wizards of the Coast, to the writers, the creative teams. They do not deserve that. They do not make corporate decisions. They do not make decisions on the scale with which the OGL was conceived and written. For that, you need to direct your anger, your rage to the upper level managements, to the executives. That is why they get paid exorbitant amounts of money. We realize we did not do that this time, and we are sorry for that. The executives are sorry that they got caught. Our goal was to get exactly the type of feedback on which provisions worked and which did not, which ultimately we got from you. You have all done a fantastic job making your voices heard. Any change this major could only have been done well if we were willing to take that feedback, no matter how it was provided. So we are. You have all forced them to listen, to make the changes and remove wording that is harmful to the community, harmful to corporate profits, which makes you an enemy, by the way. Thank you for caring enough to let us know what works, what doesn't, what you need, and what scares you. Without knowing that, we can't do our part to make the new OGL match our principles. Finally, we'd appreciate the chance to make this right. I don't know if you can. The way that this all came out, the way the proposed changes that Wizards was trying to make, I don't know. Things will never go back to normal. We love D&D's devoted players and the creators who take them on so many incredible adventures. We won't let you down. The problem is, you already have. So, where do we go from here? Well, everything still operates under the original open game license as it exists today, or as it exists now. But Wizards is still going to be making changes to the open game license. Make no mistake about that. They are absolutely going to be trying to get more money out of you, and they will do this in whatever way they feel is best. Corporations are beholden to their investors, to the bottom line, to the shareholders. They want to please them so that their stock price continues to go up. The only way to do that is to generate more revenue, and from a business perspective, they are correct in saying that D&D is under-monetized. Does it make it right in the way that they tried to change things? Absolutely not. But for corporations, fan bases, dedicated fan bases, I mean, they should care about them, but they really don't. For now, we're just going to have to do a wait and see what Wizards does. They are going to be making some changes to the OGL. We will have to see what those are, what it looks like in its entirety. Hopefully, they give it to the community first this time, instead of trying to shove it down their throats with NDAs. We will also have to wait and see what happens with Paizo and the community they have built around their open game license that they are now trying to create. That framework doesn't exist yet, but they are building it. And I should probably mention this as well. Do not attack other people who are still supportive of Dungeons and Dragons. There's many reasons that someone might still want to play. Maybe they have such fond memories, a positive sentiment towards the system, the games, the friends, and the stories that they have told and made over the years. That's not an easy thing to let go of. Some people may just not be able to invest in other systems, into other role-playing games at this point in time, and that's okay too. If you are looking to explore new systems, I have a video for you here. My name's Nathaniel. Thanks for stopping by, everyone.